Five Nights at Freddy's, Claw Marks, Chapter 7. Time had almost seemed to stop working. Max felt his blood freeze up in his veins. He was too afraid to move. What if making enough noise alerted William to his presence? As if on cue, Will strolled through the door, carrying ethanol and a box of matches. "You," he began angrily, but then a truck pulled up outside. Afton dropped everything and bolted outside, disappearing into the woods. Two husky men jumped out of the truck and unloaded something out of the bed. Something on a dolly covered with a white sheet. They didn't look very happy. In fact, they seemed a little pale. "Are you the owner of this establishment?" one of them asked. Max gave them a confused look. "Well, no," he admitted, "but I used to work here. Listen, guys, I need a ride to the police station. Can you help me? I'll pay you." The man who had spoken wiped some sweat trickling down his forehead. "That's okay, but we really need to get this indoors pronto," he insisted with a shudder. "Can you give us a hand? Well, at least one of them?" Max hesitated, then said, "All right, but I'm in a hurry." The other man spoke next. "So are we. Let's hurry, please." Max used his one good arm to help the two men push the dolly into the pizzeria. "What's going on, if you don't mind my asking?" The two men looked at each other. Then one of them said, "Let's talk about that in the truck. I don't feel comfortable here." Max knew how that felt, but surely they didn't mean Afton. He literally left as soon as they pulled up. After putting the dolly down, the men went to the truck and drove to the Hurricane Police Department. "Name's Robert, and this is my buddy, Roy," the driver said. They were both very muscular in appearance, more like bodybuilders than movers, so it seemed slightly amusing that they were afraid of anything. Was it me, or did it smell like gas in there? Max nodded. "I'm Max, and yeah, that's why I'm going to the cops. I saw my old coworker trying to light the place up," he explained. "If you two hadn't shown, I don't know what would have happened." Roy, a tanner, stouter version of Robert, shook his head. "Sounds like a regular psycho to me," he mused. If only you knew, Max thought. Then the guard asked, "So what's your story? Why were you guys freaking out back there?" Robert involuntarily shuddered again, but he explained his story. "Mister, we just came down from Sigmund's nightclub because there was an emergency. That bot William sent us was defective. She killed some people in the middle of business hours. God, it was awful. I didn't see her in action, but Roy did. He could tell you more about what happened in there. I was just in time for the aftermath, and that was just as horrendous." Max said, "William is my coworker. He was literally carrying matches with him." He didn't say anything furthermore because of his alliance with Vicky, however, and he had a feeling the bot Robert was referring to was indeed her. Roy snorted. "That guy has some serious issues. Anyways, I was there. Just visiting, nothing else. Had me a few drinks, but for the most part I kept to myself, and certainly kept my mouth shut. I'm still keeping my mouth shut after this. How many people will believe me if I said I saw a pretty waitress bot tear a dude's sternum out?" "I believe you," Max replied, intrigued. "What did she do this time?" Roy took a deep, shaky breath before he continued. "Yeah, well, I was sitting at the bar and stuff, and the thing about Sigmund's is that most everything's fully automated. The cash register even seems to have a mind of its own, over there. Anyways, this bot, she the weird mutant bear, right? Well, she was giving this guy a drink, and it was pretty obvious she was having a rough day or something. Now this guy, he was yelling at her that she screwed up his order, no pun intended, mister, and he started hitting her with a steak knife and shoving her. Well, I guess she had enough, and God, I wish I didn't remember it so vividly. She just sort of rammed her fist into his stomach. Man, my jaw was down to my knees. Can you imagine just seeing that in the public place? Lord, She was yanking at something and pulled out a big bone with smaller bones attached. Oh man, Robert, I swear, she damn near tore out his rib cage." Robert wiped his eyes quickly as though repulsed by the mental image. "Just keep talking, Roy," he muttered, staring and blinking ahead. Roy took yet another deep breath as though this was really getting to him, and kept going. "Of course, other people noticed, and there was panic, and I just got up and ran out as quick as I could with the crowd. There were some more unlucky fellows who tried to kill her, but hey, human versus robot, right? Man, the cops showed up and managed to power her down, but we had to go back in there and bring her to William. The police actually are still hunting for him, Max. Did you know he was in jail a few times before?" Max nodded slowly, lost in thought. "Yes," he murmured. "Because of child endangerment charges, correct?" Roy said, "That's right. But man, when we went back inside the retriever— Robert, I don't know if I can handle saying this, it was too much. Well, let's just say most of the robot's victims could only be identified by their dental records." Robert, pull over, it's happening again. They pulled over into the police station parking lot. Roy jumped out and ran into some bushes, ralphing violently. Robert got out and said to Max, Here we are. Stay away from that place, mister. Goodbye. Max ran inside. He saw a female trooper sitting behind the main desk. Excuse me, ma'am, he asked. I'd like to report a foul play incident. No, make that a crime in progress. Can I speak to Officer Clay, please? It's an emergency. The trooper looked up from her dieting magazine with a disinterested look on her face. Yeah, I doubt you simply came here to say hello, she yawned. A crime in progress? Max replied. Yes, my co-worker is trying to burn down Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The trooper's eyes widened. Isn't that where all those kids went missing? She asked. Max felt exasperated. Officer Clay, ma'am, where can I find him? She pointed behind her. Down the hall to the left. That's his office, she said. Max thanked her and went where she directed him, knocking anxiously on the door. Come in, the familiar voice called. Clay was at his desk, frowning at some case files. Hey, Max, he said, a small smile appearing. What's up? Max liked Clay's friendliness. Who wouldn't in a mad world like this? Hi, Clay. I hope you're not too busy. The cop shook his head. Not at all. Tell me what's the trouble. Max told him about Will's behavior, including his assault on him, hence the broken arm, and that he was actively trying to light a bonfire in Freddy's. Once again he left out Vicky's plot, though he didn't understand fully himself why he was defending her. Clay pondered. Well, I'll park outside of Freddy's. Make sure the creep doesn't come back to finish the job. If he does, well, I've got quite a few questions for him. Funny, really. There was somebody in here not too long ago, asking about Freddy's as well. A young man came through the door. Officer Clay, are you absolutely sure about it? He asked. Clay replied. Nope. I'm sorry to say the case had gone cold. Sorry, Jeremy. Max whirled around. Jeremy? As in Jeremy Fitzgerald? The man stared back. Max? He asked. They laughed and shook hands. Bro, where have you been? Jeremy chuckled. After I got fired, I didn't think you jerks would bother remembering me. Max rolled his eyes. What, forget you in a year's time? They patted each other's backs. So are the toys gone? Jeremy asked. Max said, after figuring out what he meant. Oh, the toy animatronics? All of them got scrapped. Originals are still around. Jeremy snapped his fingers in disappointment. Drat, he groaned. Aw, but whatever. It's been too long, bro. Clay laughed. As I was saying, it's beyond coincidence you both showed up talking about Freddy Fazbear's. I swear that place has bad vibes, and I'm the least superstitious one in town. Just the whole fact that Henry killed himself irks me, like he knew something the rest of us didn't. Everyone in town thinks he's responsible for the missing children, but I knew the guy. I even met his daughter. God bless her soul, I hope she's safe. Plus, after Henry's own son disappeared, I still don't believe he did it. Max never knew Henry had a son until recently. It was never brought up, especially considering his wife had left him soon afterwards. If there was anyone who seemed out of place, it was her. Jeremy listened closely, talking and taking in Clay's words. They went out with Clay to his squad car, and on the drive over to Freddy's, Clay mostly went on about how the place was going downhill. Jeremy said he had to go home soon, so after they parted, he said he'd walk home. It's not too far, and I'll be careful, he told them. Then to Max he said, We should run into each other more often, bro. Catch up, seriously. Max laughed. We will. See you later, Jeremy. After waiting in the car, Clay sighed. Want me to drive you home? Max shook his head. No, I'll just go lock up. I'll walk home, too. Clay nodded. Okay, if you're sure. Please be on the lookout, Max, he warned. I will, Max replied. The squad car pulled away as Max went inside. He stopped when he saw Freddy. Freddy approached the white sheet meekly. He carefully took it off, then dropped it. It was Vicky. She came back. He carefully reached around and switched her on. Vicky's eyes opened. Max walked up. You're here, he said, feeling a small amount of dread, oddly mixed with security. He couldn't help noticing several scars on her shoulders and hips. One large scar in particular running from her snout to her jaw. Vicky smiled that cold, nerve-snapping smile of hers. The first thing out of her mouth was, Did you kill William? Max looked down in shame. I prepared myself, but I failed to injure him mortally. I'm so sorry. It was a pathetic excuse. Max gulped when Vicky's pupils narrowed to slits, her tail in its predatory motions. He expected her to violently outburst. She damn near tore out his ribcage. Vicky approached him, baring her teeth. Max closed his eyes, waiting for death, only identified by dental records. Vicky's aggression suddenly subsided. She gently touched Max's broken arm. I guess you're in no condition to physically fight him now, she sighed, but we'll figure something out. Max felt a wave of relief sweep over him. He said, Vicky, William is trying to set fires at his place. Vicky nodded. We're running out of time, she replied. We'll guard the pizzeria. If he dares show up, we'll rip him apart. The others won't harm you. Right, Freddy? Freddy smiled and nodded. Then he took Vicky's paw and pointed to her wounds. She asked, You want to fix me? The bear nodded again. Vicky smiled back. All right, well, try not to die, Max. The two disappeared backstage. Max sighed, sitting at a table. He wondered if he could cook himself some pizza. After listening to his stomach rumble for 5 minutes, he went to the kitchen. Chica was there, observing him with curiosity. Max made a simple pepperoni pizza. After it was finished, he ate some. Chica stared him down. He gave her a slice, and she happily gulped it up. The animatronic didn't give him trouble, but Max couldn't help wondering if it was only because it wasn't midnight yet. He went back out to the dining room where Foxy was sitting at the same table Max was previously sitting. Freddy and Vicky emerged. She looked a lot better now. Freddy must have been pretty good at repairing animatronics, but how? Foxy looked in Max's direction suddenly, his eyes glowing silver. Foxy? Max asked. The fox approached him, raising his hook. Before he could strike, something jolted him like an electric shock. He looked confused, backing away from Max. What was that? Max asked Vicky, unnerved. She didn't reply right away. Then she got between Max and the other animatronics. I was afraid this might happen, she droned. Williams got his hands on the remotes. They're backup controllers, with buttons on them to send them into modes. If the signal's reaching Foxy, Williams nearby. They got antennas, so he doesn't have to be in the building to reach us. Max couldn't help noticing how uncomfortable Vicky was getting. She glanced around at the others, who were staring blankly at her, then at Max. You need to make a choice now. You're not safe here, but if you go away, William will keep killing children. Risk it all or pretend all of this never happened. The guard was stunned. Granted, he wanted William dead after he broke families apart and hurt so many innocent children. But was revenge he couldn't call his own worth his life? If he died, Will would keep going, and now at any moment the animatronics could turn on him. Max cleared his throat. Maybe I can search the woods. I know it's risky, but if I don't come back, I want all of you to know I tried, and I'm sorry. Vicky took his hand. Will you be careful? She asked. Max crossed his heart. I promise, he replied. Vicky nuzzled her head on his, purring. Max was dumbfounded, but he carefully reached up and hugged back. Maybe you're not such an idiot, she mused. Max said, I'm glad I opened the door that night. I had nobody keeping me company. Even when I tried to kill you? Max laughed. Don't push it. Vicky let him go. Max walked away, terrified but determined. The woods beside Freddy's was a dense, dark forest. The deeper you went in, the less likely you could ever find your way out again. And add that idea in mind with a child serial killer using it as his hideout. Max kept looking over his shoulder to make sure he wasn't being watched. Luckily, there was a full moon tonight, so it wasn't getting darker by the minute. Max hoped Will would be lazy enough to leave the remotes out in the open. The Purple Man might have done that if he felt like nobody would follow him. 10 minutes had passed, and Max was starting to think he might have to leave forever after all. Then something glittering caught his eye. He came across a metallic remote with red buttons. Eagerly, he picked it up and tucked it into his pocket. Max knew the others had to be around. He found one with brown buttons near a small creek, one with yellow buttons hiding behind a tree, and one with purple buttons wedged into the branches of another. Proud of himself for persevering, Max turned back in the direction of the pizzeria. He was passing a ditch when he heard a startling laugh. Max dove under some logs, praying that enough leaves were covering him. He peeked from a crack in one of the logs. In the ditch were 3 limp figures, perhaps those of children. Max squinted his eyes and realized they were 2 boys and a girl. William was standing over them, but he looked nothing like the William from earlier. He was holding a bloody Bowie knife, which dripped brilliant red drops not far from where the lifeless victims lay. His skin, it looked like late stages of rigor mortis were setting in. It was so unnaturally purple, and his eyes were nearly all black and insect-like, unblinking with no sign of pupils whatsoever. Then, in the midst of Afton's chortles, a feminine voice seemed to clearly come from the man's body itself. I told you you wouldn't die, because this isn't dying, this is living. What happened next, Max never forgot. Something seemed to move under Afton's skin, something mechanical and otherworldly. Will dropped to his knees, retching and coughing like a man of tuberculosis. Then bloody screws dropped to the dirt. Hell yeah, Will said, almost in a raspy, buzzing imitation of a human voice. With that, the Purple Man strolled back into the forest. Max lay there for what felt like half an hour before jumping to his feet. He stifled a scream as he ran as hard and fast as he could back to Freddy's, his heart pounding in his throat. Vicky caught him. I got them, he cried. Should I destroy them? Vicky shook her head. No, she said. Damn trunks might malfunction for good if you did that. Hide them quick. If William finds them again, we're all in big trouble. The hybrid took off before Max could even tell her about what he saw, or ask her where specifically to hide the remotes. Ultimately, he hid them under a spare Bonnie mask backstage. He had no clue where else.